Hello and welcome to the penultimate day at this year's Giro Rosa as we bring you daily highlights here at Vox Women in partnership with Trek. Well, we've got a big day ahead of the riders, but before all that, let's take a little look at everything that happened on yesterday's stage. Vittorio Veneto was the starting point for Stage H and what looked like, on paper, the chance of a breakaway stage. Annemiek van Vleuten still had a commanding lead in the general classification as the riders headed out onto the road. With the major climbs of the day out of the way, a breakaway of 10 riders had formed and was looking to stay away. Bigla Pro Cycling had 2 riders in that group and played their hand perfectly. Lizzie Banks attacked and got a gap while her teammate controlled the group behind. As the rain began to fall, Banks cycled into Magnago all alone and could enjoy her first major win. To add to the celebrations, her teammate Leah Thomas grabbed second ahead of Soraya Paladin of Ale Cipollini and joined Banks on the podium for the champagne. Annemiek van Vleuten came in nearly 3 minutes down, but still has a comfortable lead in the Maglia Rosa as we enter the final weekend.
I think this won't sink in for quite a few days, but I really can't quite believe it. I mean, we knew that we had the best position with Leia, and I had the only 2 with Bigla. Were the only team with 2 in the group, and we knew we were strong, but the group wasn't working very well, so we had to keep it rolling, and then we just had to go. Leia went, and I was fully on the limit, but that's the moment when you have to go, and we were all dying. So I went, and I think it was 15k to go, and I was screaming, and like Thomas is in the radio going, go, 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 and I was going, ah! And Leia behind, I could see she was healing herself to cover and everything. So I'm so ecstatic. I love racing with Leia. I love racing with these Bigla girls. And yeah, the team, this is a real team victory. And I just want to thank the whole team, the mechanics who worked so hard, our sponsors, my team director, the riders for giving me this opportunity. I'm really ecstatic.
And I'm delighted to have alongside me over the weekend and the final 2 stages, VTC City Ljubljana rider Hayley Simmons, of course twice national champion, Commonwealth medalist, many more accolades. And how are you? Because I hear you had quite a long day in the saddle yesterday.
Yeah, well, in order to be here this weekend, changed my training a little bit, but I've had a pretty full-on week, 6 hours on the time trial bike yesterday, so wow. Yeah, it's not something I do very often, but so just over 200 kilometres. But now I get the weekend to watch the bike racing rather than being in the saddle myself.
A bit of a nice change. And yeah. What did you make of yesterday's stage finish? A brilliant one for Lizzie.
Oh yeah, it was really exciting. Bigla played it so well in that break of 10. Obviously, they were the only team with 2 riders in there, and Lizzie and Leia know each other really well. They work really well together. They're friends off the bike, which of course helps. But they executed it really well, and it's really nice to see Liz get, her first big professional win and in such a big race.
And for Leia as well, I mean, it was just a case of marking everything, the strength that took.
Oh yeah, it was relentless, to be honest. Every attack that went, she was on it. She was the perfect teammate yesterday. And then, of course, she came second as well in the sprint from the break. So it's really nice to see her being able to have marked all of those moves to protect Lizzie, and then also secure second place herself.
And I know you were delighted for Lizzie Banks to see her get that result, because you know her very well, don't you?
Yeah, we were at the same school. She was a few years below me, but yeah, we know each other pretty well. And at the start of December, she actually took some stitches out of my arm for me. So she's no longer doing medicine, but still got her medical abilities. So
still trust her.
Yeah, trust her. She removed my stitches with a Stanley knife and some tweezers. So yeah. So now I'm really happy for her.
Multitasking.
I know.
And I know you've been following closely the race so far, as well as being very much into your training blog.
Yeah.
But what have you made of everything up until now in stage 9?
Yeah, it's been a really exciting race. Obviously, you kick off with the team time trial, which sort of at least maybe take some of the pressure off for stage 2, because you have a little bit of an order established, so it's not quite as hectic. But to me, it looks like it's been pretty full gas all week so far. Obviously, it's been warm as well. I know a few riders have maybe been struggling a little bit with the temperatures. So yeah, I think it's been a hard race so far. So maybe yesterday was quite nice for the peloton in that break went and it wasn't quite as hectic for them. They got maybe a little bit of respite, but I think everyone's going to be tired going into this final weekend.
Certainly, and before we look closer at what is coming up today, let's hear from some of the riders at the start line.
Yeah, exactly. There is this really hard climb at the end where all the climbers will try to do something, and probably they will try to shake up the GC. So we will see what's going to happen.
And what about Annemiek? Is anyone going to be able to catch her, or is it a race for podium places?
I think the gap that she has now is too big to close. But you know, it's the Giro, you never know. But I honestly think it's pretty impossible to close the gap on her. The podium is pretty open, so let's see what happens.
Looking forward to today? Yeah, of course. Looking forward for the final. Fantasia. We will see.
Big smiles there from Erica Magnaldi of WNT Rosa, of course a team you've ridden for over a couple of seasons. She's been in great spirits, but just probably looking forward to that big hill today as well.
Yeah, I mean, she's been climbing really, really well. She's had some really good results this week. Obviously it's a home race for her as well, so yeah, it's nice to see her so enthusiastic and looking forward to a feature of today's stage that actually some of the peloton are possibly going to be dreading a little bit, especially, you know, it being stage 9 of 10. So it's always good to see positivity and smiles when everyone's probably a little bit tired.
Yeah, and what do you make of the stage profile? Because it looks quite straightforward to a point, but then a big mountain finish.
Yeah, so in my mind, I think maybe a break will go early, that will then come back either on the kind of lower slopes of that climb where the gradient's a bit more gradual, or maybe it might come back on the, you know, on the early stages of where it really kicks up in that last 12k, I think it is, the steep section. But yeah, there's some potentially interesting cards that could be played by teams today, so it'll be interesting to see what does happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's been quite hard to predict on a lot of the stages so far. We've had a go here in the studio, a bit 50-50 with our predictions. But Elisa Longo-Borghini of Trek Segafredo is saying that gap that Van Vleuten has got now, really, there's not much that can be done about it, although anything can happen out on the road. But what do you make of the GC standings at the moment and that potential battle behind? What could we see happen today in terms of those changes?
So I agree. I think that Annemiek's probably, you know, hopefully nothing goes wrong, but in that case, I think she's probably got the win sewn up. There's a good gap of over 4 minutes to second, but then actually from second downwards for the next few places, the gaps aren't so big, especially considering that there's such a hard mountaintop finish today. You know, you can gain or lose a lot of time very quickly. So there could be some interesting battles going on. I know I saw that Anna van der Breggen had maybe not been feeling so good at the start of the week, but she's started to you know, really pick up and been riding much more strongly as the race has gone on. And of course, she was the only one within a minute of Annemiek on the time trial stage. So she'll probably be looking to definitely cement her second place on GC, because at the moment, you know, she's 10 seconds or so ahead of Cassia Niewiadoma, who's in third. The other interesting card that could be played today is that Amanda Spratt is within a minute of the podium, or just over a minute off the podium at the moment. And that could be a really interesting kind of, it's a good position for Mitchelton to be in. And now that Annemiek's win is potentially sewn up, maybe Amanda Spratt will be given a little bit more freedom, and maybe she could go for the stage win and also, you know, put herself in a podium position as well.
Well, it's certainly going to be an interesting one. I can't wait to see how it actually plays out. So for now, let's take a look at everything that did happen on the penultimate stage 9. Stage 9 here at the Giro Rosa, and it will take us today from Gemona to Melga Montasio, over 125.5 kilometres, as We take a look at this beautiful setting today and that all-important general classification. Annemiek van Vleuten of Mitchelton Scott still leading the way, 4 minutes 11 now to second placed Anna van der Breggen, and it is Kasia Nivedoma of Canyon Schram that sits in third as we come in to the penultimate day of racing. Of course, just 2 days to go now before we see our overall winner crowned. And alongside me today in commentary is Hayley Simmons. It's brilliant to have you alongside me for the last closing weekend.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Now this is just, we've said it time and time again throughout the last few days really, but this is just such a special race on the Women's World Tour calendar.
Yeah, it's really, you know, it's the longest race that we have. It's 10 days, and it's really the only truly mountainous race as well. So, yeah, it's a really special race. It's nice to see some of my teammates there just rolling to the sign-on.
So we're watching the riders sign on and take to that podium presentation, such a special part of the racing here in Italy. And, you know, I guess there's a lot of riders here. They're actually lining up, or did line up at the opening stage for their first ever Giro Rosa, and that's a very special one, especially for some of these younger riders in here as well.
Yeah, it can actually be quite an emotional thing, getting up onto the podium with so many people there to take photos and, you know, applaud you as you sign on. And obviously a lot of them are going to be quite nervous as well, especially if it's their first Giro Rosa. So yeah, you know, it's going to be a lot of emotions going on. You know, they'll be proud, they'll be nervous, they'll be excited. Yeah, it's always a big thing, the sign on.
Juliette Lebu signing on there with her team Sunweb, and she still wears that white jersey. She leads the young rider classification in this year's race, and she has had a stunning race, not just leading that classification, but very much up there. A brilliant ride from the young rider, and big smiles this morning from Annemiek van Vleuten as she signs on for Mitchelton Scott wearing the pink Maglia Rosa. Of course, brilliant spirits, as she has come into this race knowing what a favourite she is as a defending champion, but not only delivering, saw the rest of her team there, and they're having a brilliant week as a team.
Yeah, I mean, they're such a strong team. They've, you know, you've got Lucy Kennedy, who's probably one of the best kind of climbing domestiques in the world at the moment. Amanda Spratt as well. You know, she's always incredible in these climbing races. You know, Mitchelton Scott have so many cards to play, as you could see in Bira the last few years as well, when people expected maybe Annemiek to win last year, and it was actually Spratt that won the GC. So yeah, they're such a strong team.
They really are. Another strong team is CCC Liv. We just saw them signing on. Mara Vos in that points jersey, who sits second in that classification to Van Vleuten. A brilliant week for her, and just can't say enough how we've been treated to her at her absolute best when it comes to those sprint finishes and those stage victories, of which she's taken 3 already this week. Elisa Longo Borghini signing on for Trek Segafredo. She wears the blue, and anyone just joining us for the first time over this 10-day stage race, that indicates she's the best Italian, the highest ranked Italian rider in this race.
Yeah, it's nice to see that Ruth Winder as well looks fine after coming down yesterday in the closing stages.
Yeah, so yesterday we had that breakaway group of 10. Of course, Lizzie Banks taking her moment to pounce from that group to take the eventual stage victory. It was an absolutely stunning victory for the rider from Great Britain. But there was a crash with Ruth Winder of Trek Segafredo coming down in that, and it looked like a case of wet cobbles and a turn into that finish. But let's just take a little look now at stage 9 and what lies ahead, because we've got a very flat day for the most part, but of course what really affects that is that big mountaintop finish.
Yeah, there's the intermediate sprint when they come back through the starting town of Gamona, and then after that the roads are going uphill pretty much the entire way to the finish, first gradually, and then the last kind of 12-13k is going to be a real interesting finish. It's a real kick up.
The flag has dropped here at the start in Gemona, and our stage 9, penultimate stage of course of this year's Giro Rosa, is now underway as the riders roll out of the town. Sophie de Voist of Park Hotel Valkenburg wearing that green jersey, and we of course got a glimpse there of the Maglia Rosa, that pink jersey on the shoulders of Annemiek van Vleuten. So if we have a little look at the general classification coming into today, it is of course Van Vleuten that leads Anna Breggen, who's in second by 4 minutes 11. It's Kasia Niewiadoma in third, but we saw Van Vleuten really just go for it on that Queen stage as we predicted and put in a devastating time gap, which has very much given her that buffer the last few days.
Yeah, and I think everybody knows that it's going to be really difficult to overturn that buffer that she got both in that Queen stage and also obviously in the time trial. I think, she'll be pretty confident that, you know, unless something unforeseen happens, that she's got this race tied up. Almost the same for Lebu as well in the young riders jersey. You know, she's got quite a nice gap over second place. Today's a tough stage. There will be big time gaps all the way down the field, I think, at the finish, but if she continues riding as strongly as she has been all week, then you know, she should have that classification sewn up as well.
Very much an interesting battle going on behind Van Vleuten, albeit behind that quite huge time gap that she's got. What did you make of the beginning of this year's race and that opening team time trial? Of course, yourself a TT specialist. Was it what you expected that day?
A TTT is always quite interesting because you can have very strong individual time trialists within your team, but at the end of the day you need to finish you know, with 4 riders. It's the time on the 4th rider, so it's always interesting to see some teams' tactics, how many teams are finishing with 4 riders, 5 riders, some may be finishing even with all 6. I know that the riders in Mitchelton Scott, you know, worked really hard in order to kind of put Annemiek in the best possible position. Obviously they didn't win the TTT, but they didn't necessarily need to. They just needed to not lose too much time. And you know, there were some riders that were saying that effectively they were, you know, really struggling during the TTT and were just doing whatever they could to hold on and make sure that they stayed with their other teammates because they knew that they were going to be the 4th rider over the line.
Definitely, we'll talk more about that later and the benefit of your experience here in the commentary box, but you can just see what is happening here in this group because we got the familiar sight of Annemiek van Vleuten. Of course, here she is on the front of that pack, followed by her teammate Amanda Spratt. And this is very interesting because you can just see how much this gradient is biting and kicking up now. We've got all the contenders we'd expect to see here towards the front, but the devastation behind this is absolutely splitting it to pieces. And the other interesting element here is, of course, we see Amanda Spratt working for her teammate Van Vleuten a lot, especially throughout this week. Actually, Moen Passio in 3rd wheel there. But it's Annemiek van Vleuten here, and we know that she has looked to set Amanda Spratt up earlier this week to potentially set her up for a stage victory, which hasn't come off yet.
Yeah, you know, Amanda Spratt, as well as obviously Mitchelton Scott having Lucy Kennedy as an incredible climbing domestique, Amanda Spratt is a brilliant climber as well. You know, they've really got the strength there. And, you know, earlier this week, obviously, Amanda Spratt is not going to be able to necessarily go for her own kind of ambitions, you know, until almost the race is kind of sewn up for Annemiek. But now that Annemiek's got that big time gap, then maybe today can be Amanda Spratt's day, and maybe she'll get the chance to go for her own stage victory as well. It's good for Mitchelton to have so many cards to play, and actually there's a really good chance of Amanda Spratt ending up on the GC podium because she's only just over a minute down on 3rd at the moment, and we know how strong she is as a climber. You know, she won Bira 2 years ago. She won the Queen stage there. Yeah, and at Worlds, of course, last year in Innsbruck, we saw her climbing so strongly there as well. So Amanda Spratt can definitely end up with a podium position after today's stage.
9.4 kilometres to go now. This is the stage of play out on the road. Annemiek van Vleuten in the Maillot Rosa just really stringing this out. You can see the pain in the faces of the riders behind. The gaps are forming all over the place. And here with her now is Ashley Mormon-Passio and her teammate Amanda Spratt, who we've spoken about. And we're just seeing Elisa Longo-Borghini in that blue jersey. And Anna van der Breggen of Boels Dolmans, of course, the world champion in those very familiar bands there.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see as well because Katie Hall is there just in front of Anna van der Breggen. It almost looked there like Katie was kind of trying to close the gap herself, not necessarily thinking about where Anna was, but actually they are communicating, and maybe Katie's trying to help Anna get back on terms with those few riders who are up the front. Yeah, it's nice to see Anna having a strong stage today because I think she maybe didn't feel quite so good at the start of the week, and she said that on that Queen stage she finally started to feel a bit better on that last long climb. And then obviously the time trial the following day, she was the only rider within a minute of Annemiek at 53 seconds. So, it's nice to see her having a strong ride at the moment, and also Katie Hall, who's one of the best climbers in the peloton as well. Working for her teammate to help her get back on terms. So it'll be nice to see what happens at the end of today's stage with hopefully Anna van der Breggen, feeling back to her strongest.
Yeah, we've just watched Katie Hall of Boels Dolmans bring her teammate Anna van der Breggen, as you say, back to this very dangerous front group led by Van Vleuten, and we've come into this stage race looking on paper at who is very likely to have those big battles at the top of the general classification. But of course, we've seen riders with very different programs coming in. Some of the riders less known in terms of how much we've seen them race in the run up to this. Some so a little bit more like Kasia Niewiadoma, for example, at the last World Tour race, the Ovo Energy Women's Tour. But we knew how well Van Vleuten had prepared. But there are riders here who've had injuries lately, who have perhaps not had the best run-in, have not been feeling at their best. And there's so many variables on a race like this. You've got heat to contend with, you've got 10 days, no rest days in there, and anything can happen on the day.
Yeah, and the next longest race on the women's calendar is Lotto Thuringen Ladies Tour, and also now the women's Ovo Energy Women's Tour was 6 days this year. So Ovo Energy Women's Tour 6 days. Lotto Thuringen was 6 this year, has previously been 7. But then actually that's a really big jump up to a 10-day race. And okay, they've got a time trial stage in the middle of it, which some people will say, effectively for them it might be a rest day because they're not in GC contention. But actually for the girls who are in the GC contention, it's full gas every day, and it's hard. And we were saying about some of the younger riders signing on for whom it might be their first Giro Rosa. It's going to be a big shock to the system having such a hard 10-day race in the heat and the tough terrain. And it's not just the mountains. We saw the cobbled climb the other day. There have been some cobbled finishes. It's a lot to contend with.
It is. It's been a very, very tough edition of the race. And that's the thing, I think the expectation, especially when you're coming in having got such results in the previous editions, it's almost expected you can just churn out a result. As we see Katie Hall here, we saw a big effort from her to bring back her team, Van der Breggen, who now just moves herself up in between Spratt and Van Vleuten into second wheel as we come through this tunnel. But one person we haven't talked about too much yet, who is very importantly and significantly in this group, is Lucinda Brand of Team Sunweb, who currently sits 4th in the general classification. Such a strong rider, who's kind of just quietly sitting in that group at the moment.
Yeah, she's been climbing really well this race. She's also really strong in an individual time trial as well, and obviously Sunweb are really strong in the team time trial. So yeah, Lucinda's having a great race, not necessarily unexpectedly to people who know women's racing, but maybe for those who only watch certain races each year, then that might not have been quite as expected. But I think now maybe we're seeing almost a bit more what we expected with Anna van der Breggen and Annemiek you know, watching each other and breaking it up a little bit at the front, and maybe it's splitting a bit more behind.
Yeah, an interesting point you made there about Lucinda Brand is we have some new viewers coming to watch the Giro Rosa this year, which is absolutely brilliant, and it's about setting that context because Lucinda Brand, of course, is such a force to be reckoned with, such a brilliant rider, and it's been great to see her performances throughout this tour. We're just getting a glimpse of her now because what is happening up at the front is that game plan with Annemiek van Vleuten and Amanda Spratt. You saw a little bit of a look at each other, a bit of communication. They know Van der Breggen is there now. Of course, there is that gap on the classification at the moment from the top of the GC of 4 minutes 11 as we come into today between Van Vleuten and Van der Breggen, the world champion. But of course there are the interests of Amanda Spratt in there as well, who got first and third for them and the team last year, so it could be interesting to see how they play this with two of them up there at the moment. But Annemiek van Vleuten sitting on the front for a considerable, get my words out, so excited, Haley, considerable amount of time on the front, and she's had such an ideal preparation coming into this race because she's had those blocks at altitude, she's timed that to perfection, and she has looked at every kilometre of this stage race to know exactly what she needs to do. She's so strong, and she said in an interview the other day that she gets the opportunity to really target the Giro Rosa and has done for the last few years. She's got the support of her team to prepare in the best way for her. She's maybe a bit older than some of the other girls. She's been in the sport a long time. She knows her own body. She knows what she needs to do in terms of training, in terms of altitude. So she knows how to get herself in the best possible shape for this race. So she goes to the mountains, she trains in the mountains, she does threshold efforts on the road bike, on the time trial bike, and actually for this race it's those threshold efforts that are so important because the climbs are long generally, they're not the kind of short sprinty climbs. It's the same kind of physiology that would make her good as a time trialist that's enabling her to do this effort that we're seeing now up this long climb. She knows what power she can hold for certain durations and she can just sit at it, and it's so impressive to watch. It really is, and I guess psychologically as well, you can often see that, can't you, in her body language. She knows exactly how prepared she is, she knows what she can do, and she knows that she can almost comfortably sit in this, but knowing what damage she's doing behind. And as I say, with the body language, she's just so calm, and on these climbs, just like a metronome. And I think it's intimidating to the other riders as well to see her self-confidence and that she she just knows exactly what she's able to do, and they almost just accept that, okay, well, Annemiek's won this now, and it's a battle for second place, and almost having that kind of psychological advantage as well is actually more important than you might think. So we see Amanda Spratt of Mitchelton Scott now separated off her teammate and Anna van der Breggen, the world champion. So she's now sitting second to them on the road at 10 seconds behind. And we just saw when Annemiek van Vleuten just wound it up, gradually picked up that pace, gradually snapped that group to pieces, and her teammate now sits at 11 seconds behind, and we'll get confirmation of what the gaps are behind her. But we did see Ashley Mormon-Passio, CCC Live, who of course second overall last year. She looked like she was working her way up towards this group when it was together, so it'll be interesting to see where she is now behind Amanda Spratt. But it's Anna van der Breggen who just sits there on the front, and she looks like she's having a very good day in the saddle. We know she wasn't feeling her best at the midway point, but sort of day by day looked more strong and more confident. Yeah, I think she'll know that maybe the GC, like the GC win, has gone now, but she'll want to cement her second place and look at a stage win as well, because those stage wins are important. If she can't win the Maglia Rosa, then I'm sure she'd like to win today's stage. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens with those two riders at the front. I think Amanda Spratt now will
she will have known what the time gaps are between her GC place and Cassian Nieuwedome and Lucinda Brand ahead of her. She'll know what time she needs to make up in order to get herself into third position on the GC. And I think now she'll probably just, ride the last 6K of this climb at, the effort that she knows that she's able to do. Hopefully she's maybe getting a bit of information as well on what her time gaps are, but she'll just, get herself to the top of this climb and hope that she can get the time gap that she needs in order to move herself up onto third in GC.
And that podium is so prestigious and so highly coveted, and this is the point in the race where people like Amanda Spratt know that it is all to play for still, because although her teammate looks to, barring any changes that we see in the next 2 days, she looks to have sealed that victory with a big gap behind. However, it is still all to play for in terms of the rest of the podium. And if we look at those time gaps as we came in today, it was 4:11 to Annemiek Breggen, who's here with Van Vleuten now and currently sits second. But Cassian Nieuwedome at 4:26, followed by Lucinda Brand at 5:26 and Amanda Spratt at 5:33. Elise Longo Borghini in 6th, Soraya Paladin in 7th, Ferale Cipollini, Katie Hall we saw earlier, really working for her teammate, is currently in 8th. But there are a lot of positions here that can change with smaller time gaps in between them.
Yeah, today's really going to shake it up because you have got this long climb and tough climb to finish off the stage. So the time gaps at the end of today's stage are going to be big. The riders are going to be coming in 1s and 2s more than likely. So actually you could see a big change between, well, it looks like between 3rd and then down to, maybe 10th even. You'll probably see some big changes in the GC. And the riders know that tomorrow is more likely to have much smaller time gaps because, the profile is largely quite flat with, a slight uphill finish. So you might get small time gaps tomorrow that are caused by splits, in a sprint finish, but you're not going to get any kind of time gaps like you're going to get today. So today is really where you lay it all on the line to try and cement your final GC position. So yeah, I think there could be a big shake-up.
Well, we have just 5.3 kilometres to go here on stage 9, the penultimate stage of this year's Giro Rosa Ecrea. The stage in its entirety, 125.5 kilometres from Gemona through to Malga Montasio. And the state of play on the road, a reminder of that, is Annemiek van Vleuten, who wears pink. She is up the road with Annemiek Breggen, and they now have a gap to Van Vleuten's teammate Amanda Spratt, and we think chasing behind her is Ashley Montpassio of CCC Live, their GC leader, but a team that have had a brilliant week with 3 stage wins for Marianne Vos. The rider we know can win in so many different scenarios, can absolutely put in a turn of speed that just allows her to so often ride away on a bunch gallop. She's absolutely stunning to watch, and she really is just having a great week here at the Giro.
Actually, I think one of the things that I've been almost most impressed with this week is seeing the images of Marianne Vos directly after the finishes of the stages she's won, because she's just sat completely collapsed on the floor, and you almost expect to see that kind of thing at the top of the mountain finishes, with riders just heaving themselves over the final steep gradients and getting over the line. But, to see Vos just completely emptied at the end of these sprints has been really quite incredible. And just never giving up either. She sees, okay, well, there's currently a rider ahead of me, and it's, a couple of 100 meters to go, but maybe there's still a chance. And she just gives absolutely everything of herself, gets that victory, and then, collapses over the line. And for me, who has no sprint whatsoever and is not necessarily that capable of emptying myself to that extent in such a short period of time as a sprint, it's amazing for me to see somebody do that.
And Ashley Momompasio, as we did predict, has come up now to Amanda Spratt. We knew she was out there chasing very, very hard and very, very smoothly on this gradient, as she does so well, such a stunning climber in this race. And she now has come up to Amanda Spratt. But what's going to play out with those two? Because do we expect them to start working together now behind?
Well, I mean, as I said, Amanda Spratt's probably looking for time for the GC. Ashley, like, unfortunately, because of maybe not feeling so good earlier in the week, a GC position is going to be a bit harder for her to get. But she's got a stage podium possibility, so maybe they'll work together a little bit because it's I guess it's kind of in both of their interests. They can each get a podium, one a stage podium, one a GC podium. So potentially they might work together. And actually for Amanda, she doesn't have to worry too much about Ashley, being a threat for her teammate, for example, up the road. So yeah, there's going to be some interesting dynamics both with the front group of two and that second group of two. And I'm interested to see as well at what point in this last 4.4 kilometres Anna van der Breggen and Annemiek van Vleuten start, attacking each other and trying to drop the other one to go for the stage win.
Yeah, we're coming up to 4 kilometres to go now on stage 9 from Gemona to Melga Montasio, and it is Annemiek van Vleuten and Anna van der Breggen who are out front, and we are expecting the game playing to start when we get towards the closing kilometres of this significant penultimate stage. And there's a lot of people that want a coveted stage win in the Giro Rosa, and not least Anna van der Breggen, second in that GC. The gap, has looked too difficult to close over the last few days, but there is a stage victory at stake here, and we are so used to seeing these two riders
and
do
there we
exactly
go. Yeah.
this. It's Annemiek van Vleuten.
I was wondering, I did say at what point in this last 4.5 kilometres. Well, there we go.
There we go. There we have it. We expected this to happen, and it is Van Vleuten that jumps on Anna van der Breggen, who is looking to respond behind. She's in the World Championship bands. We know what these two riders are capable of. We came into the beginning of this year's Giro knowing what a big battle this could be, and we are really treated to it on this final climb and run into the finish of stage 9. Van Vleuten, who just is in absolute superb form, the perfect form you want to come into the 10-day Grand Tour in the Women's World Tour peloton. And well, Anna van der Breggen, we know this scenario has played out before, and we can never discount her, even when we've got a gap like this forming. No, definitely not.
We've seen these two, come into final climbs together before, and things can change so quickly. Yeah, I mean, I feel like Annemiek knew exactly where she was going to attack there. Us talking about how well she's prepared physically for this race in terms of the altitude training and the hours on the bike and in the mountains, but she's wrecked the courses as well. She's done her homework. She knows these stages. She knows these climbs. We saw her attack basically as the road narrowed slightly and steepened and went around to the left, and she probably knew the whole time that she's been riding with Anna van der Breggen, she probably knew, okay, well, this is the point where I'm going to attack. And she's just so impressive to watch in terms of how well she has prepared herself for this race.
Yeah, and I'd be interested to get your point of view on the preparations and the team meetings as you come into these stages, because I know that all the riders, to some extent, are looking at the recce. They're looking at perhaps GPX files and how the stage is looking on the profile, but it's one thing to do that and another thing to know every inch of these roads. And actually Van Vleuten has openly said she spent a lot of time on these exact routes.
Yeah, she makes a point of knowing them and knowing the profile, not just the profiles, because it's one thing to look at a profile on paper, but actually it's another thing to know, okay, well, at this point the road kicks up, but actually also you're going round a corner and the road narrows quite a lot. So really knowing the stages is so important. And I found myself when I've raced as well that where I've had my own kind of good results is where I've had the chance to look more thoroughly at a stage, at a race, and get a good idea of, okay, at this point I need to be at the front because, you know, people are going to be fighting for position and it's going to split. So knowing already this is where I'm going to attack is, yeah, it's really valuable. And it's difficult because obviously you can say, okay, I'm going to attack at this point, but maybe something's already happened in the stage at that point. But yeah, she's so experienced that she knows how to handle different scenarios in the race and still kind of get the results she wanted out of it.
Yeah, and we saw that, especially over the last couple of days, playing out, where we saw the riders turn with a certain amount of momentum and go straight into a cobbled, very narrow, very difficult gradient.
Yeah.
And of course, that is the point that you need to be positioned very, very well. But you, talking of gradients, can just
God, you can see how steep it is here, can't you?
How steep it is as she comes into this turn. But we did see, you know, that gap go up, then it came down to 8. No, it's gone up very slightly. So this is certainly not over yet. We know that Van Vleuten has got that huge gap, quite frankly, at the top of the GC, but in terms of looking at who is going to take the stage victory here, this is a very, very exciting one indeed. As we come up this final summit, we've got 3.3 kilometers to go. That gap is at 10 seconds, but we know that Anna van der Breggen of Boels Dolmans can see her rival
she's got
in
a carrot
her
ahead
eye
of
line.
her. What was interesting as well, coming around that previous corner where you could really see how steep it was, is the camera was on Anna van der Breggen, who she's got such a nice pedalling style, just really smooth, and she was kind of sat in the saddle, just straight line, and you could see Annemiek up ahead actually like turning across the road a little bit, almost looking as though she was trying to lessen the gradient. You know, I don't know what size chain rings they each have on their bike, but you know, Anna was just pushing a nice kind of consistent, steady, smooth rhythm, and Annemiek looked a little bit more to be trying to lessen the gradient. So you definitely cannot discount Anna van der Breggen at this point.
Losing the glasses there off the top of her helmet, but you
I
can just
feel a bit
see the
sad at that
absolute,
point.
yeah, but the absolute focus, though, I was going to say,
Yeah.
is all on this final climb. It's, you know, we can look at the roadbook, we can say it's going to be steep, but you can see with your own eyes on the screen now just how much this is kicking up, and we're seeing the best climbers in the world having to use that approach of just zigzagging a little bit across the road to flatten out that gradient. But we are seeing two different riding styles here from these two massive rivals. And how much of a difference does it make when that rider up ahead is actually in your eye line? You can see them up ahead.
Oh, it's a great thing to have in a time trial as well, because obviously you're starting at intervals in a time trial, and to be able to see somebody up ahead always spurs you on a little bit. And yeah, the gap is staying relatively consistent. So, you know, Anna van der Breggen is not kind of watching her rival disappear into the distance. She's holding her there, and you know, she knows how she's feeling. So maybe she knows that if she can keep this pace going, and she can see Annemiek zigzagging across the road. So, you know, she'll potentially be feeling quite confident that, you know, within the next 3K she can catch her up and actually go past and get the stage victory. But she's so smooth to watch, and actually her cadence is really impressive given the gradients.
Yeah, she looks very much like she's making light work of it, and
Yeah.
it is interesting to get a glimpse of the cadence and the pedal stroke of each rider as we see them come round a gradient like that. And indeed, Anna van der Breggen making it look like she's just spinning those pedals.
She certainly does look like she's making lighter work of the climb than Annemiek. But yeah, these two riders have quite different riding styles, and we've seen this before. For example, at Le Course last year, there are two very different riding styles. You know, Annemiek looks as though it's just pure grit sometimes, and she's just, you know, wrestling the bike over the line. Whereas, you know, Anna might look a bit more in control, a bit smoother, but you know, I'd be happy to to ride like Annemiek, to be honest. You know,
So much
she's
power.
so impressive, so strong.
Yeah, so strong, so much power, different styles. But that is the brilliant thing about this rivalry between these two riders, who are now first and second on the road at the moment with a 13-second gap with just 2.5 kilometres to go, is it can be deceptive, because you can see somebody looking like they're labouring the gradient a little bit more, but actually we know that you can never see either of these riders discount the other because of what we've seen in the likes of Le Course by Le Tour de France, because we again could not predict that right until the finish line. And we've said time and time again that Annemiek van Vleuten has the confidence of having an over 4-minute gap on the GC. She knew that she was coming into this in such fine form. She knew she could carry that confidence on her shoulders going into that Malia Rosa on the Queen stage. But what she cannot do here is think that there's no chance of Anna van der Breggen coming back, because we know that she can, and she has done before.
And of course they know each other so well because they're both Dutch, so they ride together on the national team. You know, they're on the same team at the World Championships. So they're teammates and rivals, and it's difficult when you know, in this race they are obviously rivals, but they know each other really well. They know each other's strengths, they know each other's weaknesses. But yeah, you're right, they'll both know not to discount the other one. Annemiek will definitely not feel comfortable with 16 seconds over Anna van der Breggen.
Yeah, we saw that time gap at about 8, 9, 10 seconds. It was hovering around about there. It looks like it's extended slightly. So it is Annemiek van Vleuten that is at a confident distance of 16 seconds now.
But 2.1k is a long way to go on this gradient.
Yeah, so normally we would say 2k to go, very close to that finish line. But of course, we are looking at a summit finish today. We are on this approach to the mountaintop, and actually you can see Annemiek van Vleuten now. She's giving this absolutely everything because she knows what could potentially unfold behind. She really, really not only wants to win the general classification here at the Giro, Rosa Recrea, but she of course wants to take a very prestigious stage victory here on this penultimate stage. But Anna van der Breggen fighting hard behind as we come up to that banner which indicates 2 kilometres to go, and it'll be interesting to see of course also what is unfolding behind them on the road, because not only is there a battle for the 3rd position on today's stage podium, but of course we have got some small time gaps behind in the general classification, and we know her teammate Amanda Spratt very much wants to move up there. But Lucinda Brand of course sitting in 4th as well, Elisa Lamborghini, we know they're all battling those time gaps behind as we look at this race as an overall. And that time gap now is down to 13 seconds. We can see Annemiek van Vleuten quite often now looking over her shoulder because she knows this could be a very dangerous rider coming up to her behind.
Yeah, she's trying to keep an eye on Anna van der Breggen. Yeah, she wants to know where she is. It's one of those things where you kind of know that you should just keep going and not keep looking behind, but you feel like you need to because you want to get an idea of what that gap is. The other thing that I found, you know, really impressive actually on yesterday's stage from Annemiek is she attacked on one of the climbs yesterday with 2k to go before the summit and summited with a gap to the other riders actually, and she did so because she knew that the descent off that climb was maybe quite technical and narrow, and she didn't want other riders, you know, putting her under pressure and trying to force her to take any risks on the descent. And the confidence that she had attacking 2k to the summit on that climb, just to kind of, you know, protect herself a little bit and make sure that she wasn't going to be in any trouble on the descent, is, you know, that's riding from someone who's just so confident in their abilities, and she knew what she needed to do. She knew what she wanted to get out of that stage and how to protect herself, and it's so impressive to see.
It is, and what is impressive is the amount of experience, as you say, that she's bringing to a race like this. But not only knowing what she needs to do, but being able to execute that because of the form she's in and the preparation she's done. And that time gap is coming down. It's 9 seconds, 1.3 kilometres to go here on stage 9. And Annemiek van Vleuten for the first, Annemiek van Vleuten. She's looking over her shoulder actually, and we've seen her just absolutely rock steady, but she's under pressure here.
Yeah, and actually this final run into the finish, this final 1.2k, we can see actually the gradients eased off a little bit. It's not so steep, and you know, obviously Annemiek knows that Anna van der Breggen is also a very strong time trialist as well, and she can just sit and you know, put the power out and potentially be closing this gap. And yeah, I think Annemiek maybe looks a little bit worried that Anna van der Breggen's going to come back to her.
So
we
are coming in to 1k to go. They pass the familiar banner. Well, at least Annemiek van Vleuten comes under that banner, and Anna van der Breggen of Boel-Stolmans is bearing down on her. We saw that gap go up. We saw two different riding styles, very familiar riding styles of these two huge rivals in the Women's World Tour peloton. And we are seeing Annemiek van Vleuten, who leads this race overall, looking around, but now it is head down as this gradient flattens out a little bit. Yeah, it's just going to be full gas to the finish, and yeah, I believe that the gradient is you know, much more steady in this last kind of 700 meters, and you know that you haven't got the kind of steep kicks where one of the riders will be, you know, punching up. In fact, there's a little bit of descent there even. So it's, you know, it's almost going to be, there'll be one. It looks like it's going to come back together, and then it will be interesting to see what happens. Is Anna going to attack straight away and go past her, and then it's going to be a time trial effort to the finish? Oh, yeah, there we go. 400 metres to go. Anna van der Breggen, the world champion, comes up to Annemiek van Vleuten in pink. She pounces around her, she jumps, she has taken her time, her smooth pedalling style on these gradients, making it look like light work. She looks over her shoulder and she has gone. She had the confidence to know she could come back up to her rival. She didn't just come back up to her, she came round. We can't see a glimpse at the moment of Van Vleuten, but Anna van der Breggen can. She looks over her shoulders as she comes in, she takes it, and it is Anna van der Breggen of Boel-Stolmans, sits up, punches the sky, and look at the gap behind
she had time to
that
celebrate.
She has put into Annemiek van Vleuten, who comes round that final turn now.
She was so controlled coming up to the wheel of Annemiek van Vleuten, and then as soon as she got to her back wheel, she accelerated past. And I did think in those last few K that Anna van der Breggen looked more in control. It looked as though Annemiek might have a problem responding to an attack like that, and that was superb riding from van der Breggen.
It really was. Annemiek van Vleuten started to look round and look round and look round again, and that gap was there, and then it wasn't there anymore, and then it was Anna van der Breggen that took it on into this final 50 metres to the line, and you could actually see the look on her face there. That was a special stage victory, one that she very, very much had her sights on today. And as well, that victory salute, you can actually see how much gradient is there when you watch her ride across the line like that.
Yeah, she looked behind her once after she attacked, and then and that was it.
And it's Ashley Moman-Passio that comes in for third, followed by Amanda Spratt. So an interesting one there behind Ashley Moman-Passio.
It looks like a gap of about today. 1 minute 40 on the first two from the look of the clock on the barriers.
Well, we'll have to see what that has done.
And there's Katie Hall, which is a great ride from her after the effort that she put in to take Anna van der Breggen back to that group.
Demi Vollering crossing the line there to take sixth behind Katie Hall. And there we have it. Confirmation of that result. It was Anna van der Breggen that took it from Annemiek van Vleuten, and in the podium position of third, it is Ashley Moman-Passio. So, what has that done to the general classification? Unsurprisingly, Van Vleuten leads Anna van der Breggen, but it is Amanda Spratt that leaps into third place there. Fourth is Ashley Moman-Passio, and fifth is Katie Hall.
Kasia Niewiadoma moves to 6th.
And we saw that Juliette Lebeau actually got a top 10 finish on the stage as well, which again should you know, put her safely in the leading position.
The Giro, and that didn't work. That was quite clear already. Yeah, pretty early. Annemiek was really strong this week. So she was good. And then the Queen stage is what left. I felt better and better this Giro also. So I just, the only thing you can do is try to win a stage in the end. So yeah, we are really happy that it was today possible.
Yeah, and also tried to get my teammates on the podium. That's why I attacked so early with 11k to go, to make it hard, so she could drop Kasia and Lucinda Brandt. So I'm happy that we achieved that, but maybe that was a bit then hard also to take also the victory on this beautiful climb. But beautiful hard climb. But I think it was a great fight for the stage win, and I gave everything I had. I died completely. So yeah, but still in pink. That's the most important thing, and it was very good to hear that Amanda Spratt was very supportive for me the whole 10 days. Got herself on the podium.
Anna van der Breggen of Bosdomans in the World Championship bands takes to the podium. The spray of the champagne, she takes the stage 9 victory with big smiles on the podium there. And Annemiek van Vleuten, as she said in her interview there, delighted to be once again pulling on the Maglia Rosa, the pink jersey, as she leads the general classification coming in to tomorrow's final stage. She gave it everything, as she said, to attempt to take that stage victory here. And she pulls on the points leader jersey. Juliette Lebeau once again takes the white jersey of the young rider classification in this 10-day stage race. Just one day to go. She's worn this for much of the race, and this will mean a lot to her.
It's been great riding from her this week.
And once again, Annemiek van Vleuten takes the green jersey, the Queen of the Mountain classification, which she leads as well. Elisa Longo Borghini pulls on blue. She has been the best placed Italian rider throughout this race in the 2019 edition. Big smiles from her on the podium. So we are getting a look now at the moment that flag dropped and the stage 9 began. And this is the moment where our race leader and defending champion from last year, Annemiek van Vleuten, jumped, made her move, followed there, of course, straight on the wheel by Amanda Spratt. You can see exactly what that did to the group behind, split to pieces, and this was the state of play on the road. It was Annemiek van Vleuten, followed by Anna van der Breggen, and you can see the point that they started to put a gap into Amanda Spratt. Ashley Monman-Passio rode up to her. Those two were together on the road, and then the big battle was on at the front between van Vleuten and van der Breggen. This is the point that Annemiek van Vleuten jumped on her rival, a move we've seen her do many times before. And then we basically watched Anna van der Breggen stay very calm and keep her eye on the prize of the stage win.
Yeah, she just rode that last 4K with such control, and yeah, and then the attack, you know, in the closing few hundred meters was pretty special to watch. And yeah, we heard Annemiek obviously say that she died, and yeah, obviously she did look as though she was suffering. Keep looking behind her, but it's nice to hear her say as well that she did what she could to help her teammate, to repay Amanda Spratt for you know, helping her for the rest of the week. And it's really nice to see those things happen and hear the riders talk about them.
And this was the point that Anna van der Breggen crossed the line, taking the stage victory, and you know, always staying confident, always staying calm, that she could get her rival back. Annemiek van Vleuten crossing the line in second. Of course, she keeps the Maglia Rosa, but that beautiful stage victory on that summit finish goes to Anna van der Breggen.
So as we close out stage 9, let's just one more time revisit that general classification. Annemiek van Vleuten leading Anna van der Breggen by 3:50, and it is indeed Amanda Spratt that now moves herself into 3rd on the GC.
I think it was really helpful to see this stage, because when you see now when Erika and Anne arrived, it was at this moment who was steep and not go over your pace, so then they tried it slowly at the whole climb and then full gas everything at the last kilometers.
Yeah, it was really good. The team did really well for me, and I have to thank all the girls again. They were really looking after me. In the end, when the climb started, the maglia rosa went, and I missed 20 meters to get attached to that leading group, and then yeah, I couldn't follow. I went my pace up the hill, and I did it all by my pace, and I'm just proud of myself. And I really had a bad moment before the Giro. I am just very happy to be here and to have reached what I've reached. Thank you.
Well, we thought once again Annemiek might have it all her way on that final climb into the stage finish, but we were treated to that familiar battle between those two riders.
Yeah, I mean, the two of them always put on a good show, don't they? It's you know, reminiscent of La Course and people who previously said that women's racing isn't all that exciting. Well, hopefully once again we're proving them all wrong, and you know, the familiar faces of Van Vleuten and Van der Breggen have put on a show again.
And interesting to see Ashley Montmorency take to the podium today in 3rd. She's not had the ideal week, she's not felt her best, but good to see her up there.
Yeah, I'm really happy for her. She was so proud last year to be the first South African rider on a Grand Tour podium. You know, I know how much that meant to her. It's a race that she loves, the Giro Rosa, and I know that she will have wanted to maybe overall this year be a little bit higher up the GC, but you know, for her to come back from what has not been her best week and get a podium result on such a hard finish today, you know, hopefully she'll be really pleased with that.
And Amanda Spratt, Mitchelton Scott, teammate of course of Van Vleuten, she's had a bit of a battle within the race going on further down that GC. Looking now to tomorrow, the final stage, firstly, what do you think that might mean for the GC positions?
I mean, I think tomorrow is unlikely to shake the GC up that much. It looks on paper to not be the kind of stage where there are going to be big time gaps. It might not be, you know, a sprint from like the whole bunch, but it's a slightly uphill finish, but you know, not a mountain like today by any means. So I would imagine that any time gaps tomorrow are probably going to be quite small, and so really it's going to be more of a formality and the honours of the stage win and the stage podium rather than maybe shaking up the GC.
And you mentioned the stage finale then at the end of the race. What are you expecting? Bunch gallop?
My money's on Vos again. You know, she's shown what she can do this week. There have been a couple of slightly uphill sprints and she's just been so dominant. So my money for tomorrow goes on Vos, but it's the final stage. There are lots of riders, lots of teams who as yet have missed out on stage victories, stage podiums. So it's all to play for tomorrow. There are going to be a lot of people wanting to you know, make their name in this race. So anything could happen.
Well, we've got all that to look forward to. So join us once again. Me and Hayley will be here again at the same time tomorrow. Bye bye for now.